Hello and welcome to Game Day Grace, the podcast where sports and faith unite in powerful conversations. I'm David Schiele. That is Cory Mose. We do this thing every single Wednesday right here on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or our official Facebook page. Make sure to follow us on TikTok as well at Game Day Grace Pod. We want to thank you for watching or listening wherever you are watching or listening, and we want to encourage you to share this with a family or friend, with a family member or a friend, because we believe one share can change a life. It's not just something we say. Lives have actually changed because you have been sharing this podcast and people have been listening to it. We've got testimony after testimony about the things that have happened when people just gave this podcast a listen every single Wednesday. Today, we've got a guy who we just kind of talked about a little bit off camera. You got to have a screw loose to do what this guy does, all right? First of all, he's a head coach. He's the new head coach of cross country at Fresno Pacific University. I had to look it up. It's about 15 minutes south of Fresno State, if you're wondering, kind of what the area is. But to be a long distance runner, we've agreed you got to be a little crazy to do that. But our guest, Landon Miller, is a long distance runner, also the new head coach of the Sunbirds. That's a dope name, by the way. The Sunbirds is like one of the best mascots I've ever heard of. But congratulations on the new position. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you guys reaching out to me to get on the podcast. Honestly, I've listened to a lot of podcasts growing up, and one of the things I knew getting into coaching, I was like, I can't wait to be on a podcast. And so this is one of, I think I did one with some of my athletes at CCU last year or a year and a half ago, but this is my first official one, I'd say.
Well, this is unlike any other podcast out there. We talk about the Lord on here. It is a sports podcast, but we gonna keep it 100, and we know who our source is, who we belong to. So that's what it's all about, man. So your yes is definitely big, and Cory, I know you being a long distance runner or whatever you did. Well, all the running, I don't do running. I don't do running. So, whatever specific running thing y'all want to get into, Cory, you got it, bro, because leave me out of it.
Yeah, one thing I was interested in, just reading the bio a little bit, is something that, you talk about having a screw loose. You got to have a screw loose to do the steeplechase. And I did steeplechase for a little bit. Of course, it was just, people ask me, why'd you want to get into it? And my reasoning was, you get to throw a hurdle in there and a water jump while you're running around an oval. It's kind of cool, but that's crazy when you say it out loud. So why did you want to get into steeplechase throughout your career?
When I was getting recruited out of high school, my coach at Indiana Wesleyan, while he was recruiting me, he kind of getting to know my background. I played basketball through my freshman year of high school. So I think I started in second grade, played through freshman year of high school. So I played a lot of basketball. And he said that I guess athleticism or coordination that you get from playing basketball translates well to steeplechase. Obviously you guys can't tell, but I'm 6'4", so that also helps when it comes to steeplechase.
I'm not gonna lie, I didn't like guys like you, bro. I didn't like over 6'2", over 6. Bro, it's not fair, David. I'm taking 3 strides and he's taking 1. It's just not fair.
I mean, with the steeplechase in particular, for me, it was, once I got the form down, it's not jumping over the barrier. It's more so just lifting your legs and continue to run. And so that definitely is a huge bonus in that event particularly.
Yeah, it's a lot of intricacies, right? Because it's all about your foot placement when you're going over the hurdle, but then also your foot placement when you're landing on that water jump to be around that edge, the hill a little bit in the water. I didn't know about all that technique stuff when I started to get into it. So it was just a whole new world opening up to me. Is that kind of like the same for you?
Honestly, so Coach Foss was my coach in college at Indiana Wesleyan. He's, if you talk to, obviously you guys probably aren't super in tune with the NAI cross country world. He's a legend in that space. And so I was blessed to have one of the best coaches, and he, coached me up from day one, got me going on it. And so I kind of felt like you're saying, all those intricacies, he did a really good job of, he doesn't throw it all on me at once, but as I'm, progressing, he's, tweaking, teaching me, all right, yeah, you want to get your foot placed here. So we're going to practice that today. And then, kind of building upon it to the time when I was a senior, I felt like I was really kind of making it happen in that event. A lot of credit to him.
I just wanted to know what the origins of the steeplechase were, because for me, like when I'm watching like the Olympics, I'm like, who thought, like, you know what this race needs? Some water. Middle of the track. Just put some water on there. Like, where did that
Yeah.
come from?
Yeah, so it has a Christian background. So I looked this up once because I figured I'm a steeplechaser, I need to know this. And so I think it was in the late 1800s, early 1900s in the UK, they would race from church to church. And so you'd start at one church and finish at the other church, and you would know where you were going by seeing the steeple on top of the church and where they have the cross and everything at the top of the point. And while you're running, you'd have to jump over fences and across creeks. And so that's kind of where all the obstacles came from. And so like that's the origin story of it. And I think it was like in the 1930s or 1920s is when they kind of translated it to the track and made it a part of the Olympics.
That's cool. I had no idea. I had no idea that was a thing. Great
Yeah.
question,
know
David.
I just was always wondering, like, who thought, like, you know what this needs? Man, throw some water on the track right quick, bro. Let's spice it up.
Yeah, I mean, whoever thought of taking it from that off-road type race to the track, like that's the dude. I don't know who did that. That's like the genius of it.
Yeah.
Because yeah, what you're saying is, yeah, they weren't running on a track; they were running through fields, and so I don't know where that translation process happened.
Wow.
Well,
That is
Coach-
crazy. He has a Christian background, bro.
Yeah,
did
I
not
had
know
no
that.
idea. That's
I
really
didn't know
cool.
that.
That's really cool. You know what else is cool? We're talking to a two-time. You talking about we don't know a lot about NAIA cross country. I do know you're a two-time runner-up, national runner-up, when it comes to NAIA cross country. I do got to ask though, how much does it kind of pain you a little bit to be a two-time runner-up? And what were those races like? Not getting that first place finish.
Yeah, I think one of my runners up was the team in cross country, and so that one didn't pain me at all because we kind of came in. I think we were ranked top 10 in the country or just outside the top 10, and it was just one of those days. All seven of us just like we had the day of our lives at that meet and popped off, and so we were like we were running the team that won. Realistically, like, they were just far and away the best team, and they ran the best that day. So that one was awesome. And then yeah, the other one, I think it was indoor track my senior year. That was a little painful because I had come into that meet ranked number one, and then in the final is actually my buddy. His name is Tim Thacker. He's a 150, or I think he ended up running 149 in the 800, and I ran like 156 in the 800. So it just came down to the last like 200 meters, and he had the wheels and dusted me. And so that one was tough because it was like, I'm like all 100% on the gas, and there's nothing I could do. He just ran away from me. So, but that was, I mean, great experiences, and learned a lot from all of those experiences, and ton of fun. Yeah.
See, first of all, that's an all-world name, Tim Thacker. That is a Hall of Fame name right there. I'm sorry. I see why you lost. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a
For real.
great name. Like, yo, here comes Tim Thacker. It's like, ooh, oh, y'all better watch out.
Oh yeah.
That is
Yeah.
crazy, man. So you ran at Indiana Wesleyan, and then you coached at Colorado Christian. You also had a cup of coffee at Liberty. You have intentionally, from what it seems like, been at these Christian universities. What led into those decisions to say, you know what, I'm going to make sure I'm at a place where Christ is really the center of this institution?
Yeah, I guess actually it wasn't necessarily the most intentional thing. Coming out of high school, I only looked at Christian colleges. I knew I wanted to go, do my 4-year degree at a Christian university. And then, yeah, I ran at Liberty for 1 year because of all the COVID stuff. I had a 5th year. But I knew when I knew I had the 5th year, I sent out emails to everyone because I wanted to go Division 1 and make that jump to just that higher competition level. And Yeah, I emailed everyone, and Liberty was actually the only school that got back to me. And so I think it's been more of God leading me to these schools as opposed to me being like, hey, I'm going to only go to Christian schools because that's one of the things I'm not opposed to going to a state school or a non-Christian school because I do think, as a man of faith, I can have an impact in a way on the young men and women that I would end up coaching at those schools. But to this point, God's kept me in that Christian school atmosphere. And it's definitely one of those things, too, where it is nice in the sense that you can just very intentionally disciple, as opposed to, if you're not at a Christian school, there's, different things you can and can't say, and there's, tightropes you have to walk. And so, definitely been blessed to be at schools where you can just stand on your faith and not really have to worry about anyone, saying, "Oh, you can't say that, can't say that."
Are there any misconceptions about Christian universities that you may have had going into the college process that now coming out of it is like, that's not really true, or anything that stood out to you going to a Christian-based university?
I don't know if there's any misconceptions. Maybe more so at just like Liberty in particular, because I know that school has a lot of like people, say one thing or another about the school. And I think that's one of the things, because that one's just, Liberty's more in the news. Like they're kind of the flagship Christian school in the country. And so you might think one way or another about a Christian school, but, what it really comes down to is the people at the universities. Like every university I've been at that's Christian, professors, students, people just literally just working there at, in the cafeteria or whatever. Um, like you run into a lot of high quality people that love the Lord and love what they do and getting to serve, the, 18 to 24-year-olds that are going to school there. And that, I think that's the coolest part about the Christian universities. I think community is done really well. A healthy Christian school's community is done really well. When I think about Christian community, you look at Acts, I think it's 2:42, where it's talking about the first group of believers. And, I think that's something that I've seen done really well at Christian schools, which is maybe something you're not going to see from the outside because you're not getting to participate in that community.
Yeah, the section in Acts that he's talking about is when they were living life on life with one another, of course, giving up their possessions for others. And I'm curious to know, like, how do you try to incorporate something like that now as a leader in
hmm
that field, as a coach, and in that type of like community-based, sacrificial-based environment?
Yeah, I think one of the big things is it definitely talks about they like broke bread together. Obviously, that can be translated to like doing communion, but also I think there's just something powerful about sitting down at a table and having meals together. And so that's one of the things I really encourage in my team is, whether it be at the cafeteria or we'll have team meals, I think really building team culture is if you get some food, sit around a table, community is going to be made one way or another. And then the other way is I like to encourage Bible studies. I think from my college experience at Indiana Wesleyan, we had the men's team had a Bible study and the women's team had a Bible study, and the coach wasn't at it. It was student led. And I think that there's something really powerful about doing it that way because then they're kind of becoming, I think there's a little bit more vulnerability that they can share when the coach isn't in the room. But then, they're getting into the word together and that, if you start doing a Bible study with someone, like you guys are going to become like, great friends just because there's the power of the word, you're talking about it and you're gonna, I think it's just gonna draw you into community with someone. And so, yeah, that's one of the things I know at FPU, they already do that. Like, I'm not gonna have to make people start it. But I'm going to continue to encourage people to find that space to do that on the men's and women's teams.
Usually, when it comes to coaches at Christian universities, specifically those Christian universities, they're seeing their position as a coach as it's also like minister. Like, it's like this is ministry work at the same time that I'm coaching. So not only am I trying to make sure that whatever the playing surface is, that they are the best on that surface, but I also need to make sure that I'm stewarding this in a way that they're also becoming elite disciples. But that leadership requires a consistently credible example. So for you, now that you're in a position where you are the head coach of the men's and women's cross country programs, in what ways have you, I don't know if the word is challenged yourself or at least prepared yourself to be in that position of not just coach, but also somebody who's a leader of young people in what many will see as ministerial work?
I would agree. I had a conversation when I was in Denver. I had a conversation with our pastor, and we were just kind of talking about what our daily lives looked like as coach versus pastor, and we kind of came to the conclusion it's like obviously a pastor is a way different role than a coach. I'm not trying to say it's the same, but the rhythms of life are really similar in how we're going through life, pouring into people, and that type of thing. And so, yeah, I would say actually, I kind of, as I was in the process of getting hired here at FPU, I was talking to one of my good buddies out in Colorado, and it was one of those things where, I have, the set of values that our team, I'm going to tell them like this, like a set of values that we're going to prioritize, be like, hey, like this is, as a FPU cross country runner, this is what we want you to be about. But we were talking about this, and I kind of had that realization of it was like it's not like a weight, but it's a realization of responsibility that's like, hey, if I'm gonna talk about these values in front of the team, I have to stand on those. And obviously, we're humans, I'm not going to get it perfect, but that's something I'm going to have to stand on, which makes which in a way motivates you in your relationship with Christ, where it's like, yeah, I need to, be like taking up my cross daily and giving it to the Lord. Quiet time, prayer, spending time in the Word, that kind of stuff is important, but it's also that mental shift of, in the morning, it's like, you got to be like, Lord, like, I need your help. There was a baseball coach that spoke to our athletic staff at CCU last year. He said was like a super practical thing. Every time he talked to his team, he would just like, as he's walking over there, driving over there, whatever, to get to practice, he would just be invite the Lord, say like, Lord, give me the words to say to the team what you want them to hear. And so I think of it as a little bit of I'm just acting as a conduit of I want to be a steward of God's will to these athletes. And so that means being connected to him and letting him work through me, and, not trying to like muscle it up on my own.
I think one thing that stood out to me was just reading a quote from your bio, and it says, Coach Miller understands that success is not just measured by times and trophies, but by the growth of character and commitment to Christ. When you hear stuff like that from your administration, what goes through your mind, and also like how does that kind of help with your walk and just having that backing from the higher ups about, yeah, we love the way that he coaches, but we also just love the way that he commits to Christ and he's an example for his athletes.
Yeah, that was super cool in the interview process to get to know our athletic director. His name's Kyle Ferguson, and kind of the vision he's laying out is he's like, number one, we're discipling kids in Christianity. That's your number one job priority is and then obviously the academics, and then community on campus within your team, creating culture. And he goes, then winning, he's like, winning's our fourth tier objective, which obviously, I believe that when you're looking at holistic development of a student athlete, winning is a tough, like, yeah, it's like we're not prioritizing winning, we're prioritizing doing your best. And I think being a good steward of the gifts that God given you is a huge part of your holistic development. But yeah, it's like to have that backing of him. He's like, hey, like we want these kids to have a great collegiate experience and to grow in their relationships with Christ. And if at the end of the day, if that comes at the cost of, lifting a trophy, if a kid gets saved versus lifting a trophy, like, like who cares about the trophy, right? Obviously, I believe those things can go hand in hand. Is like you can really have a great like kids are gonna adhere. I'm searching for the word, but they're gonna adhere to these concepts when things are going well, and so you want to cultivate, development and success in the sport. But yeah, like you're saying, it's to have that backing of, hey, we want to help our athletes pursue Christ and learn what that looks like through the wins and through the failures. Um, it definitely is a very comforting spot to be, where you don't have to worry about, oh, if I, throw in a Bible verse here when I'm talking to the team, is someone going to come and be like, yo, you can't do that.
I'm sure that's just like relieving
Hmm.
that you don't have to worry about that because we actually talked to Coach Vic Schaefer. He's a women's basketball coach at Texas. And, he's in that battlefield, right? Where he does. They play on Sundays, and so he hates it, because he's not able to go to church. And he said that he does like a little sermon before the games, and he feels like that's his obligation, just because his players aren't able to go to church. And so I always think, though, you're at a university that's when I say you, I mean Coach Schaefer, at a university that's a public institution, and I wonder if he ever has that type of inkling of, man, I wonder if one of my players doesn't like this, and he could maybe get in trouble for it. I don't know. I don't know the rules behind it, but I'm sure you not having those thoughts at all kind of helps with your walk, but then also just helps with your mission of evangelism.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's wild how polar opposite that is, where to hold a practice on Sunday at FPU, you have to fill out a form to get permission. So
That's
it's
crazy.
it's a
Okay.
complete, like, actually our team will practice on Sunday, talking about distance runners having a screw loose. We'll have 6:30 a.m. practice and do long runs Sunday morning. But like, administration is cool with that, because the timeline of it is, you'll get done by 8:30, and then have time to go shower, and then as a team we'll go to church. Probably not all the same church, but we'll, kind of have that rhythm of practice then church on Sunday morning. So they're cool with it. But yeah, like, if we for whatever reason need to practice in the middle of the afternoon, like, we'd have to get approval to be able to do that, because they don't want us taken away from the athlete's ability to get to church.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
cool. I wanted to ask about this because this is something that we have a little bit in common, or we may have in common. So Landon and I both came up through high school in Indiana. Now, you were at, I believe, where were you at? Fairfield?
Yep, Fairfield, yeah.
Yeah, he was at Fairfield. What's your mascot? I've never known the Fairfield mascot, bro.
Falcon Pride, the Fairfield Falcons. No, yeah, it was a good one.
Yeah, so he's a Fairfield Falcon. I'm a Hamilton Southeastern Royal. I was all the way down in Fishers, and it was in high school. Obviously, it's public school, right? It was in high school where I first encountered that people could believe in absolutely nothing, and I didn't even know that. And so when we created the our school's branch of Crusaders for Christ, when we created our version of Crew, these kids apparently got so mad about it that they created a counter group called the HSC Secular Club. Just to be just so anti Crusaders for Christ, which I was like, what? And so that was a thing, but I don't know what it was like up in I think that's Gosher, Indiana, right?
Goshen, yeah, with an N.
Goshen,
Yeah.
Indiana. Yeah, I don't know how the atmosphere was like in Goshen, Indiana, like what the church culture might have been up there.
Hmm. Yeah, I would say so. We were pretty much a small, like, farm high school. I think my graduating class was 120. So it was a pretty small high school. We actually I noticed the Atlanta Falcons jersey. We got in trouble because our Falcon logo was the exact same, just the colors changed. So then we had to switch our logo for copyright reasons.
It'd be like that.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah, it was kind of the joke. I don't know what it's like now. Obviously, well, it's probably like 8 years later now. But going through school there, it almost felt like a Christian school that wasn't, obviously it was a public high school, but, lots of the teachers were Christian. The majority of the kids were Christian. We did not have any atheist secular club or anything. our FCA was popping. Like pretty much all the athletes went to FCA, and so yeah, it did. I mean, it was a public school in name, but it felt like really comfortable, I guess, to be a Christian there. There wasn't very much, actually, I talk about this because I think this is kind of wild in this day and age. Our biology teacher, when she, like they teach about the creation of the world or whatever in that time, she went through creation and evolution, and then we had to write a paper on what we thought was true. And so,
What?
yeah.
Oh, yo.
And so,
That's gotta be
that's
against the
crazy.
rule.
That's
I'm
crazy.
gotta
pretty sure they can't do that anymore. But I remember,
Cannot do
yeah,
that. Yo.
Was it like a
They made you
persuasive
give-
essay?
yeah, Yeah.
Bro, a creationism versus evolution paper in
yeah.
a public high school is crazy.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, I remember, like because that like in high school, like it didn't seem like that crazy of a thing because that was just the culture of our high school. But then, looking back now, I was like, I do not know how she got away with that. Like or at some point in the recent, years, it had to have stopped.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
for sure.
Like you
For sure.
cannot do that. Like, not at a public high school. But that's really interesting though, because now, like years later, it would have been cool to be able to write a paper giving an argument for God. I think that would have been really cool to do that at such a young age, because then, because you really researched what apologists call the cosmological argument, like being able to highly research that and then write a paper on it, I feel like you would be so firm in that now, when you did encounter skeptics, you'd be like, dude, I researched this. I wrote
Yeah,
a whole paper on this, and you would say, look, even the most skeptical historians and scientists say the universe had a beginning. And so if you believe that nothing created everything, you honestly have greater faith than I do.
yeah,
Because I believe someone created everything. You believe no one created everything and fine-tuned it and gave it a very unique design to where it works and sustains life in the exact way, because if something was off to the 1 millionth of a degree, we could not live.
oh
Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Yeah. Like it's just
yeah.
I think that in that aspect it's kind of cool.
hmm
But I'm sorry, like she definitely was putting her job on the line.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure. Yeah, like it's definitely stopped since then. But yeah, it was definitely. I think it was cool. Obviously, she taught evolution pretty thorough, and then like the creation, she's like kind of like parlayed it into talking about creation and wasn't as thorough on creation. I'm assuming like because the evolution is what the curriculum is. But yeah, no, I remember, and then we always had like a question, like once a month could just ask her questions. Like we'd have a Friday, just ask her questions. And so then, I mean, I know this isn't against the rules. We just asked her like, what do you believe? And then she like went through creation and said why she believed it. Because like I think if you get asked a question as a teacher, like you can say like if they're asking your opinion or your belief, like you can talk about it. And so that was also really cool because obviously she's coming from a science background and she's like, this is why I believe it lines up with like what we know now,
But I think that's like a lot of scientists that I've been like researching lately and just seeing on social media is a lot of people recognizing God has to be real because there's too many things that needed to like go right for this all to make sense. Even like I was reading an article about a what is it, optometrist, that the eye doctor, um, and just saying how the fact that we can see through both eyes and what all the little things that had to go right for just in our pupils and stuff like that for us to be able to see things, it has to be from God. And that's kind of when they went to school for that, that's when they came to faith because they realized everything had to be perfect for us to be able to see. And so just hearing that and hearing from your teacher from high school, to me, I'm just surprised more scientists aren't believers because of the things that just are unexplainable.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean to relate it to sport too. That's one of the things as I research our sport, the cross country specific, training physiology, it's like like that's sometimes what blows my mind is like, well, like this is such a niche sport, and like God was like, all right, we're gonna set up your bodies so if you run a mile at this pace, it's gonna help this adaptation in your blood that's gonna help you run faster on race day, and just like like all the things with the physiology that like I could go deep into that stuff, but it's just like wild that God, he's just like, yep, this is the way I'm gonna set it up, and then like down to those intricacies of even the smallest little things, and I don't know. That's to me what like blows my mind too. Is I'm just like, I don't know. Like yeah, like you're saying, it would be so hard. Like it takes way more faith to believe that like we evolved to be like this, as opposed to being created to be like this.
Yeah, 100%. I actually just watched a video yesterday. I'll text it to both of you guys. I just watched a video yesterday. This guy asked 100 apologists what the best argument for God was. And he was like, what is the best argument for God? The number one answer. So I think 53 of the 100 said the answer is creation. 53 of the 100 said creation is the best argument, because when you look at like the vast point of view of creation, it is very intricate. Like gravity cannot turn off for 5 seconds or else we're dead. Like gravity has to work exactly how it works for the earth to be able to sustain life. Water has to be what it is for the earth to sustain life. Like all these little things. Once one of the 53 apologists said, honestly, if you just Google protein and protein synthesis, you're going to have to believe in God. Because like if you just look up protein synthesis, you're going to be like, how in the world like does that just happen? Like you're telling me two atoms just came together and just, oh, yep, there it is. All these complex systems, the cell, how complex the cell is, and how, these things work and that work, whatever it is. And so ultimately, here's a really good analogy that I was given when it came to the whole science versus God thing. So we know Instagram is an app. Instagram exists, right? Instagram has an algorithm. There are people who understand the algorithm of Instagram, and they can break it down, and they can tell you the best time to post on Instagram. They can tell you the worst time to post on Instagram. They can tell you the type of pictures and the type of reels that will get the most interactions on Instagram. That does not mean they created Instagram. It also does not mean Instagram does not have a creator. Instagram did not just pop up on the phone and be like, here it is, right? You can understand how nature works, but that does not mean you made nature consistent. That's one of the biggest assumptions you have to make to even perform science. You have to assume that nature is consistent here in America, and it is the exact same way in Australia, and the exact same way in India, and the exact same way in England. Like you have to assume that, because you can't be in all those places at once. You have to assume nature is consistent. And then you can conduct the scientific method in order to get to something. But there's a lot of things the scientific method cannot prove, including itself.
Even like the Earth's tilt, right? If the tilt was just a little bit off in one direction, the planet wouldn't even be able to be running or spinning on its own, rotating on its own. Gotta use actual science terms. But like to me, that's another example, right? Like just the Earth's tilt. The degree of the tilt means so much for humanity, and just saying that it just became that way because it came that way. Just I don't know. I just think it's wild. It's wild to think about that. And to me, it just makes me like think about the scope of God and how we really don't know the scope. We don't know how far and how deep He really has been able to impact the world around us, and we'll never understand, but. That don't mean you could put a limit on what He can and can't do, though.
That's facts. And I think the biggest thing or the best thing is here's somebody that created the universe and wants a personal relationship with you.
Yeah.
And knows you so well and says, I actually have doors that I want to open for you and doors I want to close to protect you. he created the universe, right? So like that means he had to be like, you know what? I need Venus to be where it is so that Earth can be where it is, so that humanity can be sustained, so I can have a relationship with Landon.
Yeah.
Like, come on now. Like, come on, man. That's, to me, that's awesome. And so with that being said, Landon, last thing we like to get into is we always ask guests, what's something that God has put on your heart or put on your mind throughout 2025? Now that you're in this position, you are a head coach of cross-country programs. What's something that you think he is really putting on your heart to make sure that you get right going into the end of this year?
That's a good question. I feel like there's a couple of things running through my mind. So I definitely think one thing, like for me, is actually shout out my grandma. She's we always at the start of the year we get breakfast and we'll be like, hey, what's your word for the year type deal. And I didn't have one for her going into 2025, but like a theme that I feel like has been showing up in my life is like the Lord just calling me to practice humility. And so yeah, that's one of the things, and I think that's one of our team values is going to be humility, because I think it's just so important to, like we were just talking about, like the humility to like realize God is so much more vast than us, and to think, start having pride about what I'm doing, and like, oh, this athlete ran this, and start having pride about that is like what's the point, Like, I think there's just a humility, like we need humility to realize like, hey, like there's a balance of like how insignificant our lives are, but the importance that God bestows upon us through like communicating, have a relationship with him in the ways that he's going to use us, and how on our own, yeah, like it doesn't matter. And the other thing too is I've just finished this book. This is a recommendation if you guys haven't read it. It's called Live No Lies by John Mark Comer. Read it with our men's group at church in Colorado. And one of the things that I really took away from it, and so it talks a lot about spiritual warfare and kind of how the enemy uses lies just to kind of hold you down and how to rise above that. And I think there's something like through experience and through reading that book that really like taught me like the power of truth. I think, as Christians, there's not enough of us like learning truth about what God says about us. And so I had this experience where our men's group, we took a river trip in Colorado where we hopped in the river in Colorado, floated down for 3 days into Utah. And we like had campfire the first night, and we were talking about, at this point I had accepted the job at FPU. I knew I was moving out there in a few weeks, and so it was kind of a last hurrah with some of the guys from church. And one of the guys was just like, hey, like let's pray over Landon going into this. And the thing that impacted me about that is guys that are love the Lord, walking with the Spirit, and they're like praying these truths over me that like it's not them coming up with on their own, it's like the Lord speaking through them to me, like these truths about me. And so I was like, it was like kind of a connection moment for me where I'm like, people don't hear what God says about them enough, whether that be from the word or from a believer praying over you or speaking truth about you. And I think that's one way of growth, where it's like that I really want to pray into as a coach is like, how can I impart truth about my athletes, about who they are, who God says they are, so that they, start to learn these truths about themselves, as opposed to feeding into all these lies that the world, the enemy, everything is throwing on them. And so, yeah, I feel like that's one of the things that God's kind of been showing me and teaching me in, which I feel like is preparing me for this fall.
That's great. I actually had just one more follow-up, David, before we get out of here. But just, you kind of spoke about your church community in Colorado. It seems like you've been speaking about your church community throughout this whole conversation. And so to me, that tells me that you were able to find a great church that you felt acclimated with, and really created some strong relationships with. And so now a month into Fresno, first question, have you found a church out there? And second question, like what is something that you kind of look for in a church, and what is that process like for you whenever you're looking for a place to call, your congregation?
Yeah, for sure. Well, if anyone's listening in Denver and needs a church, Anthem Denver is where I went. Great community. Yeah. And so I haven't found a church yet. I've been visiting. I think since I've been here 3 Sundays. I was back home in Indiana for one Sunday. And so I've been visiting some different churches. And yeah, kind of what, to your question, what I feel like I'm looking for is I do think going back to what we talked about earlier, Acts 2:42, that's something I look for in a church, is a church that's doing community well. Because I think, church isn't just meet on Sunday, praise the Lord, get filled up, and leave. Those are the people you're going to do life with, you're going to grow with. And so that's kind of what I'm looking for in a church, is I'm like, hey, is this a church where the people seem like, you show up on Sunday, people know each other, love each other well, because I truly think like that's one of our biggest ways of like showing the gospel to the community. I think it's somewhere in Acts, in that two, like Acts chapter 2, somewhere right before that or right after it. Like it says, they will know Jesus or they'll know like the love of Jesus by how you love one another. And so that's something I'm looking for in a church for sure. And then obviously, things like making sure the teaching is theologically correct. I personally prefer it when churches, I'm forgetting the particular word for it, but like kind of go through Bible verses verse by verse, preach the Bible that way, like, hey, we're going through the book of John for the next month, and then go through it verse by verse type deal. But yeah, and so still looking for that church community. I've gotten some good recommendations from people I know, and so, but yeah, I think that's one of the things, having such a good community and seeing how God provided for me in Denver. It was very bitter to leave that community, but it's also like, dude, I know that God, he provided when I was in Denver. He provided for me when I was in Virginia. Like, it sucks that community doesn't happen in one weekend, but it's going to happen. And so that's been a weight off my shoulders, knowing that I know God's going to provide it. It's just, I got to be faithful, show up, and start to participate in community, and it's going to happen.
Yeah, for you to find community in Denver, yeah, God was looking out for you for sure. I mean,
that's crazy.
Bro, Denver's like Austin, bro. Denver's kind of like Austin.
Yeah,
it
is. Yeah,
it's kind of crazy over there.
I will say I was 100% surprised in Denver. I kind of walked into it thinking, I'm like, there's going to be like 3 churches here. And I felt like it's a huge city, so obviously there's going to be a large number of believers. But I was surprised at how many pockets of, there's a church here with a good community, church here with good community. And so, like, I didn't feel like it was super uncommon. Obviously, I'm working in Christian spaces, being at a Christian school, but definitely, I was surprised. Like, my thought going into it was, I was like, I'm going to have a hard time meeting literally any Christians here. And I didn't feel like that was the case.
That's awesome.
Yeah. No, that is awesome. I love that, man. I love that. Super last thing for real, because I see you're from Indiana. Are you a Pacers fan, or are you more Bulls because it's closer to Chicago?
This is wild. I'm a Thunder fan.
All right, that don't even make sense. Like
zero, bro. Zero.
No, 100%. No, it literally so the Thunder switched from Seattle in 2008? And
yeah, something like that, yeah.
Me and my best friend at the time, we were just like, their colors are dope. We're going to be Thunder fans. So like that was like elementary school, and both of us have ridden it out like since that day. So yeah, that's totally random. Everyone was giving me hate. So like, dude, why are you a Thunder fan? You're from Indiana. And I'm like, that's just that's the team that God led me to.
Well, it finally paid off. So I'll give you that. It finally paid off. But it came at the expense of Indiana because I guess guy got a sense of humor. Like, I'm going to give you a title.
No,
But guess what? Everybody else going to be mad. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, no, I just met with one of my buddies when I was back in Indiana, and like I think he was at the watch party like in is it they've changed the name of that stadium. I think it's Bankers
they've
Life.
changed the name a million times.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he was like there at the watch party and he was just like, dude, it was rough, man. And I'm like, I feel it, but I also don't, man. I'm just
that's
excited.
it. But we winners over here, so I
Yeah.
can't really relate.
Yeah.
That's tough. That's tough. One of the most depressing watch parties I've ever seen was the TCU watch party when they played Georgia for the national championship. Because someone was there like live streaming it or whatever it was. I gotta go find it, but like it was depressing. Like I was like, man, I'm a Georgia fan, so I'm like, for me, I'm kind of curious how the other side feels about it. But I'm like, that's embarrassing.
Yeah, it was beat down.
Yeah, so I can only imagine how it felt. Game 7, Halliburton goes down, and you're like, well, we lost. Yeah, that's
No,
tough.
I remember. Yeah, I was like, yeah. On the flip side, I like he goes down, and I'm like, what? Like we're gonna win. Like I don't know. The Pacers were
They kept it
leading
close.
the first half.
They kept it
Yeah, they
close.
kept it close. But like when that happened, I was just like that confidence of. But I will say, so I have a Chet Holmgren jersey, and I would wear that on game days in Denver, like during the or I think it was the quarterfinals when the Thunder played the Denver.
Yeah.
That's the most hate I would receive. I'd walk into a store and people would just walk by and be like, "Boo!" And I was like, "Dude, this is fun."
It's fun being a bad guy sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun being a bad guy
Hey,
sometimes.
we're called to be set apart. You know what I'm saying?
Nice.
So
There you go. Yeah, called to be set apart. That's a good one, man. That's a good one. Hey, dude, thank you so much, man. Thank you so much for your yes. I know it's super crazy to just get a LinkedIn message out of nowhere and be like, yo, jump on this podcast. But hey, thanks for your yes, man. We really enjoyed the time.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys. It was great getting to know you and speak with you guys. And yeah, definitely keep pursuing this ministry for y'all. It's awesome. I listened to a couple of episodes, and it's awesome to hear from all these different people in the sports world that, we're all sharing the same beliefs. It's encouraging.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing, man. We really, it's such a blessing because this was God's idea, not ours. So
Mhm.
it
Yeah,
it just
for sure.
kind of came, it hit me out of nowhere. And then I called Cory, and then he was like, yeah, you know what? Lord told me to do it too. So, yeah, here we are. And we've been talking to people all over the country. So it's really been a blessing. So it's never a light thing when someone says yes, because for a little behind the scenes look, for every yes, there's like 6 left on reds. So, because it's not even like, I don't even want to call it a no, like it is, but it's ultimately just like they read the message. So it's like, okay, they saw it, but
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely read the message, and then I went and like looked up your podcast, and then I was like, I don't know. I almost left you on red, then I was like, it's an hour. Like who cares? Like I'll come talk to you guys and see where it goes.
yeah, man, that's,
thank you for that
hey.
mindset. Yeah. Hey, just an hour. Talk about
Just,
Christ.
Yeah.
that's it. Ain't nothing crazy. We're not gonna give you a theology quiz. We're not coming in here like, what's the Trinity mean? Like we don't do that. We just we just like the fellowship, man, and we're just trying to reach people that love sports, and love that. That there are people who are believers, and truly, a lot of times in these press conferences and whatnot, they're just like, man, my faith is important to me. My faith's a big deal to me. And, I try to do my best to represent Christ in my sport, but it's like, there's another level to that, obviously. Like someone who puts their faith into this text, it's not just as simple as, yeah, I just try to represent Christ. Like, nah, you've read. That means you've read. And that means God definitely has put a word on your heart. You definitely have a testimony. Because if you've given your life to Christ, then we already know you have done a big thing because you've had to deny yourself to do that. Mm-hmm. So there's a story there. And we want to reach out to people in the sports world who want to share those stories. That's ultimately what the whole podcast is about. But it's hard to do that when LinkedIn only gives you 140 characters. So, and I was like, man, we shoot shots, and we just hope we get a yes, because we know when we see good fruit, we know it. Like we know. Cory and I are able to discern like who just has the scripture in their bio versus who's really living the scriptures with their actions. So, man, thank you so much, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah, 100%. We want to say thank you to everybody that was listening. If you enjoyed this conversation, you already know what to do. I said it at the beginning. I'll say it again. Subscribe, hit the follow button, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, our Facebook page, our TikTok page. Make sure to give Cory and I a follow on Instagram, because we're posting clips all the time. We're posting, different, I guess reels is what they're called. I don't know, man. I don't even like social media that much anymore, but I'm doing it so people can get this word. So follow us on social media, and send this to a family member or a friend, because one share can indeed change a life. Until we see you again next Wednesday, if it is God's will, everybody be blessed.